Hey, somebody's got to check the hidden camera. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to the Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. This week, the Professional Noticer is sponsored by Books for Veterans. The Veterans Administration in Washington, D.C. has asked for 10,000 Andy Andrews books. I'm personally donating as many as I can, but to reach 10,000, I need your help. What we're able to do to make that easier for you is for every $10 donation you make, a hardback book will be sent to the Veterans Administration for veterans, their families, and for the employees of the VA. That $10 will cover the cost of the book, the shipping, and handling. So whether you can make this a personal gift or a corporate donation, just go to andyandrews.com/veterans. This can be added to a website purchase or done as an individual entry. And thanks very much for your support. Observations and answers, that's what we do here on the Professional Noticer. And as you know, we love it when somebody comes to the table with both observations and answers. And we have such a guest today. This guy has been a friend of mine for a long time. I'm trying to sit here and think, where did I meet him? I've known him for a long time, and before I tell you who he is, I'm just gonna hang this out here for you and give you, this guy, those most interesting man in the world commercials. This guy could do them. He could do them. Because I think he's the most interesting man in the world. He was the lead singer of a band that had songs on MTV and the radio. He founded a national news organization, Yellowhammer News, that is still rocking and rolling. He has appeared on Anderson Cooper several times, The Late Show starring Stephen Colbert, The View, and just about every other talk show you can think of. He was the senior communications aide to President Trump for 500 days. He was the author of the New York Times bestselling book, Team of Vipers, which is a great book. He was the deputy director of national intelligence, the number 2 guy over 13 intelligence agencies. Presently, he's the CEO of Telegraph Creative, and today he released a single out, and it's called You, Your Mom, and Me, and it's just tearing up the airwaves. Please welcome my friend Cliff Sims.
Thanks for having me, Andy. Good to be here.
Buddy, I read this, and it's hard to believe that you're 36 years old. I mean, it's just kind of stunning.
A lot has happened. I feel like I've lived a few different lifetimes in a pretty short span, but it's been fun. It's been fun.
Well, you have. And I think, didn't we meet at a Yellowhammer event?
I think that's right. We hosted the big Alabama Economic Growth Summit. So all these CEOs and politicians and all these people get in a room, and we thought, who could we come in here and shake these people up the most? And somebody said this maniac Andy Andrews might be a good fit for that.
Yeah.
And so and it turns out you were a big hit. So yeah, I think that's the first time we met.
Wow. Well, and I have been fascinated just by your career ever since, because you were like a human version of that game Pong. You're like, you bounce off this wall and you come way over here. And after you wrote Team of Vipers, I'm just relate this, and then we'll kind of go back to the beginning. But after you wrote Team of Vipers, and President Trump was mad at you, and you, of course, kept telling his children, tell your dad to read the book. I didn't say anything bad about him, right? And But after that, I was, you kind of laid low for just a little bit, and I was talking to Sean Parnell, who was going to speak that night at the Republican National Convention. Sean is the author of Outlaw Platoon. He's running for Senate right now
Yep.
in Pennsylvania. Great guy, great friend of mine, and so he was going over the speech with me, and so I said, okay, well here's just a couple of suggestions. I think right here, if you shift that to so and so, I think it might be a little clearer. And he said, man, I've already sent this in to the people for the teleprompter, and I can't change it. And I said, well, this is just a little change, Sean. And he said, man, that guy that's running this he's real tough, and I
He did
I
not
can't.
say this.
He did say this, and I said, well, who is it? And he said, it's a guy named Cliff Sims. And I'm like, Cliff Sims is running the speakers for the Republican National Convention? I said, you call Cliff and tell him I'm going to beat him up if he doesn't change the teleprompter for you. But then I mean, but you have just done a ton of stuff. Now tell me about just your beginnings, because I'm very interested, and I think people will be interested in your entrepreneurial bent. What were your parents and grandparents like? What kind of background did you come from?
Yeah, so son and grandson of Baptist ministers. That's really how I grew up. Born in Mississippi, lived all over the South. When my dad would kind of get called from church to church, the first entrepreneurial thing I really remember doing, well, two things. When I was in elementary school, I was the one who figured out how to fold the paper into a ninja star that you could throw and hit people across the room. And so I would fold the paper in that way. I would color them different colors. I had like a way that I would use a rubber band to make them better than other people could make them. And I would sell them for $0.25 at school. That's the first entrepreneurial thing I really remember doing. And then when I got into middle school, I got the wood shop teacher, which do they even do wood shop at school anymore? Like
I don't think so, because you'd have to wear a helmet.
Totally. They'd be scared to death somebody's going to cut off a finger. And in fairness, it's kind of a miracle that I didn't cut off a finger. But I convinced the wood shop teacher to let me be his basically personal aide, like I'd be his helper in class. And so one period a day at school, I would help the class with whatever project for that day for the first 20 minutes. The rest of the time, I would make wooden Nike checks, the Nike symbol, and make them into keychains. And thankfully, Nike never sent me a cease and desist order, but I was selling those like hotcakes in Richburg Middle School down in Crestview, Florida. So I kind of always had this entrepreneurial bent, I guess, to me. But what I really wanted to do, Andy, was play in the NBA. That was my passion, was basketball. And so I was able to go and play in college. And that was really my passion. But my brother, who's 4 years younger than me, well, let me tell you this story. So I'm playing basketball at Delta State University in Mississippi. I decide I want to transfer, and I visit this school, tiny town called Enterprise, Alabama. It's they're famous for being the only town in the country with a monument to a bug in the middle
the
of
boll
town.
weevil, yeah.
It's the boll weevil monument. You're familiar with it, of course. And a friend of mine was playing at the junior college there. He said, you should really come visit. I think you'd like it. And so my plan was, I'm going to transfer to a junior college, then I'll go back to a 4-year university. My family's living in Florida at the time. And so I decided I want to go to this tiny school in Enterprise, Alabama, call my dad up and to tell him that's what I'm going to do. And basically he says to me, this is crazy, but our family is moving to Enterprise, Alabama. He had got called to a church there to be executive pastor, completely separate from what I was doing basketball wise. So our family gets reunited there in Enterprise, Alabama. And I always remember that moment because it was a time in my life where I honestly didn't care what God's plan was for me. I was kind of doing my own thing. And even at that point, he was ordering my steps and my family's steps. So I always look back at that when I wonder, is God in control of what's going on here? there's no way that happens if he's not.
Right.
So go there and play basketball, win a state championship that year, start visiting schools of where I'm going to go next. My brother comes home and he says, "Hey, I'm playing drums for the band at church on Wednesday night. And the one thing we're missing is a singer. None of us, we need a lead singer. We need somebody to lead worship for these kids." So he's like, "I know you've never really done that, but you did sing in youth choir growing up. So would you help us with that?" So I say, "Sure." And a few months goes by, and then we do the obvious thing that you have to do when you are a praise and worship band at a church, which is you drop out of school and hit the road and tour full time.
Oh yeah, I bet your dad was thrilled.
They loved it. They thought this is a brilliant idea. It's a brilliant idea. And so, but the next 5 years, so I switched, directions, didn't go play basketball somewhere else. The next 5 years, we toured all over the country and had songs on MTV and radio and major motion pictures. And it was a fascinating experience. I mean, we didn't make a ton of money. We weren't rich and famous and all of that kind of stuff. But there is something about, I'll never forget being on the road in, wherever, New Mexico at 2 a.m. and looking up at the stars in the sky as we're riding along the interstate and realizing I've got nowhere else to be. Like, this is what I do. And so that was just an amazing experience. But I got married, didn't want to be on the road 250 days a year anymore. And so I wanted to go back and find something else to do. My Sunday school teacher in Enterprise decided to run for the House of Representatives. He basically said, "I don't know anything about politics. You don't know anything about politics, but why don't you come help me run my campaign?" That was 2009, the first thing I did in politics. And
Okay, no wait. What do you think that he saw in you? He said, "I don't know anything about politics. You don't know anything about politics, but come on and run my campaign." So what personality trait, what character trait did he see in you that made him think that way?
Hustle, just grit. I mean, we had even while I was doing the music stuff, we started several kind of side businesses together and worked together on different things. He was an entrepreneur. And probably the first entrepreneur that I was ever really exposed to. We all only know the world that we've been exposed to, right? So
Right.
There's a reason, for instance, why wealthy people are wealthy. People who have money do certain things. They act certain ways. They spend their money. They spend their time certain ways, all these different things. But if you've only been exposed to, I don't want this to come across as, I'm not saying this in a derogatory way. If you've only spent time with poor people, that's the only world that is how do poor people spend their time and their money or whatever. And again, as the son of a minister, my parents are amazing. They're not entrepreneurs. We were living on one income, and it was a minister's income. So
Right.
He exposed me to a whole nother world of entrepreneurship and kind of realizing that's how I was wired already. And so we had done these things together so that when he ran for the House of Representatives for the first time, he said, "Hey, we don't know anything about this, but we have proven that we'll figure it out in all these other things that we did." So I think that's what it was.
There you go. Okay, well, keep going.
Yeah. So we won. Lo and behold, he's now a member of the U.S. Congress, Barry Moore from Alabama's 2nd Congressional District. And so as a part of that process, I realized in Alabama that there was a void for a conservative news outlet, which is surprising to a lot of people because it's Alabama, right? Like everything's conservative, right? And really the media, I found, was really no different than what we know the national media to be. And
Right.
So I knew I wanted to go back and get my degree. I went back to University of Alabama and launched a personal blog about state politics and called it Yellowhammer Politics, Yellowhammer being the state bird of Alabama. And I thought it would be a way to get business, Andy. I'll show I'm in the know, and maybe some people hire me as a consultant, or who knows. I didn't expect it to do what happened, which was blow up into millions of people reading the site. You have what I would have to assume is probably still one of the top 2 or 3 most read articles in the history of Yellowhammer when you penned the article in the 2016 election cycle about here's how to, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but here's how you should make this decision. And it just, it went crazy all over the country, just a massive, massive success, like everything that you do. But I ran Yellowhammer for a few years. I had a radio program as a part of that, and Donald Trump as a candidate came on my radio program. And that was the first time that I met him. And that interview is now kind of famous, I guess, in some ways, for being when Donald Trump for the first time said, we don't say Christmas anymore. They're trying to stop us from saying Christmas. We're going to bring Christmas back. Now, this was in the middle of summer of 2016 that he's saying this. So it was kind of out of nowhere in a classic Donald Trump kind of way. But that's the first time we met. Jeff Sessions, who was our U.S. Senator at the time, was working with Trump at that point. And he basically said to me, they need good people. And this may be the only opportunity you might ever have to work on a presidential campaign. Why don't you take a leave of absence and go do it? And so I did. And lo and behold, we won. And the president asked me to come in and help run the messaging operation there. And I had an office in the West Wing where the only thing that separated my office from the Oval Office was a room called the Roosevelt Room. So it was pretty heavy stuff for a kid from Alabama, but had an amazing experience with it. And then came back later in the administration, as you alluded to, as Deputy Director of National Intelligence for Strategy and Communications. The Director of National Intelligence oversees all the U.S. intelligence community. So that was a whole nother universe of the national security stuff. So it's been quite a ride, to say the least. And now I'm back in Birmingham as the CEO of a marketing and advertising agency here called Telegraph.
And a dad. You're a dad.
The most important title of all.
Yeah, tell me about that journey, because I've kind of lived with it and prayed for you guys and just been aware that, when the COVID thing happened, I just very aware of this, and it's a story that you've lived for a while, and so tell us a bit about that, if you will.
So this will be a strange place to start, but there was a day in White House in the press secretary's office. Sarah Sanders was the press secretary at the time, and I broke down crying in the press secretary's office. It wasn't because the work was hard. It wasn't because of the weight of the issues we were dealing with or the stress of the environment. All those things existed. It was because my wife was struggling with the fact that she hadn't been able to get pregnant we've been married 7-8 years at that point. And it's been something that we had, struggled with as a couple through that time, and talking about God's providence and his plan and trying to understand that. And so that was heavy, really more so on my wife than me, but me too, because of the way that it affected her. And so, I think that when we think about adoption, if we're being honest, it's kind of like growing up when the missionary would come to church on Sunday and show you a slide presentation. And I'm kind of dating myself here that there were slide presentations, right? But they would come and they would talk about in some far off country, they're doing that and want you to support our mission. And most people say to themselves in that moment, thank God for them that they are called to that. I'm not called to that, but thank God that somebody is. And you know what? I'm going to drop a couple of dollars in the offering plate, and I'm so glad that they would be willing to do that. But it feels unattainable. It feels like that's so radical. How could someone do that? You're going to pick your life up and go live somewhere else in the world. I think there are similarities with adoption or foster care. I remember how I viewed foster families or adoptive parents, it'd be kind of the same way. Wow, that's amazing that you could do that, but that feels unattainable. And I also think, if we're being honest, there's a part of you that wonders, will I love that child the way that I would love a biological child? And that's not something that is probably people be willing to talk much about. But I think if we're being honest, that is a question that every adoptive parent at some point in the process prior to having that child wrestles with and asks themselves, because you don't know how is this going to be. But we started pursuing adoption, and it was one of those things where we had a lot of people in our life who had adopted, so it felt more attainable. It felt, okay, these people aren't superheroes and they can adopt a child. And so, Megan went on, my wife went on a mission trip while I was still in the White House and couldn't go, to a country in Africa where they worked in an orphanage, and she felt what it felt like to desperately want to take every one of those children home with you and realize that you will absolutely love that child just like you would love a biological child. And so, God did a work in her heart and both of our hearts really throughout the process. And we landed on Colombia as the country that we wanted to adopt from, because we had some friends there on the ground who could work with us through the process. And that's what we did. And we were matched with a little boy that we named Shepherd. We call him Shep, and we adopted him a year ago today. We got him for the first time. And so that's our adoption journey.
Wow. One of my best friends, he and his wife struggled for years and could not have a biological baby. And so they adopted a child, a boy, and then a couple of years later, they adopted a girl. And then, as you've heard the story, Lynn got pregnant and they had Matthew, and then she got pregnant again, they had Michaela. And I've heard Mike say that as hard as that was, it was perfectly worked out, because he said if we had had Matthew and Michaela first, we would not have adopted. I mean, if we'd had Matthew and Mackenzie first, we would not have adopted Gregory and Michaela. And I can't imagine my life without Gregory and Michaela.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's I'm just very happy for you and your wife. And this song that I just heard like 30 minutes ago, I mean, it was not what I expected. It's you, your mom, and me. And I just love it. And that's already out there, and you can get it on Apple and Spotify and anywhere, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. And it's crazy. In the first, I think, 3 hours that I posted a video that's kind of a behind the scenes story of the story behind the song. It got over 100,000 views in less than 3 hours. So it's definitely out there and resonating with people. And I think that is the result of if nothing else right now, people are desperate for authenticity. Everybody out there is trying to present themselves as whatever, they got their stuff together, and whatever your life portray on Instagram and people put on Twitter and Facebook, it's not real life. And so when somebody is vulnerable and says, this is who I really am, this is my struggles, these are my fears, this is what my life is really like, it cuts through all of the rest of that noise. And so the story behind the song is basically, in 2019, we didn't know who he was. We'd never met him. The way the process works is you get matched with a child. You don't have like a menu, that you're selecting. Okay, I think I'll take that one. That's not how it works. And so I was sitting at the piano and thinking about this, and I thought of this line, I don't know where you are, but I pray you're safe. I don't know who you are, but soon I'll see you face to face. Like, I didn't even know who he was. And that was kind of the genesis of this song idea. And I recorded a voice memo in my iPhone to remind myself of that. And not until we got him, found out who he was, and met him for the first time, I remembered the song idea that I had started, that I finished the song with the emotions that I had from meeting him. So the song ends with, the day I saw your face, the world slipped away. It was more than I ever dreamed, just you, your mom, and me. And so you kind of get the whole arc of the story behind it. So it's been really cool to see, it resonate with people. And I hope it encourages people to make adoption feel more attainable. I don't have my stuff together. Like, we're a disaster half the time at home and trying to, I mean, parenting is the hardest job that exists. And so we don't get it right all the time, but it's been so fun. And like your friend said, I can't imagine what our lives would be like without Shep. So it's
Right.
been amazing.
I got a couple more questions I want to ask you before I let you go. And this one, I have no idea how you'll answer this. You and I have had a lot of long conversations and very interesting, very deep conversations, and at crazy times in each of our lives. And I know that, and I don't want to get anything started here. I mean, nobody needs to write me letters, and nobody needs to write Cliff letters.
Oh yeah,
But
you would never be a troublemaker, Andy. That's
yeah,
not
no,
who
this
you
is
are.
not me, is it? No, it's not me. But I do wonder, just knowing you as I do, and just was there ever a time? I mean, I remember you sending me a picture one day of what was right outside your office, and it was those piling or pilings. You can tell I live at the beach. It was the columns where the limo drives in at the White House, and so you had access. I mean, you were alone with President Trump many times. I mean, just alone.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious, was there ever a time that surprised you? Or, I mean, I wonder, I try to put myself in that position and think, how would I react? Because I remember, there was one time you're in the hallway and you run into Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, and and he's with President Trump, and you three are talking, and you talk about Alabama football, and but was there ever a time that you were surprised or didn't know what to do? Or
Man, I could go a lot of different directions with that, but yeah, I mean, all the time. First of all, Steve Jobs has a quote that I love, and it's that everything in the world that you call life was invented or created by someone who is no smarter than you are. And you have this idea in your head of, as the Hamilton musical would say it, the room where it happens. What's it like in the room where it happens? And what you realize when you are in that room is that everybody, kings, prime ministers, ambassadors, CEOs of the biggest companies in the world, every single one of these people is trying to figure it out every day. They don't have all the answers. They're working through problems every single day, trying to figure it out. And it is a simultaneously terrifying and liberating realization that these people are no smarter than you are. It's terrifying because you're like, oh my gosh, I thought there was somebody out there who had this thing figured out. I assume there were people somewhere, but it's liberating because you realize, well, if they can do it, that I can do it too. And that's why I have no qualms about, I never started a company. I'm going to be the CEO of my own company. I never worked in politics. I think I'm going to go work in the White House. I never worked in the intelligence community. I'm going to go be deputy director of national intelligence. I've never run an ad agency. Here I am. Because I'm going to figure it out. And that's what makes life interesting and fun. So there were tons of surprising things like that, realizations that you have. But I could point to a couple of very specific things that were surprising moments. One of them was the first time that a member of the U.S. Armed Services was killed under President Trump. There was a mission that he gave the go-ahead for. Some special operators went in, and one of them was killed. And that impacted him deeply in a way that you can intellectually understand, oh, the weight of the presidency must be a tough thing to lives are at stake kind of thing. But we think about that in an abstract way until you're there and you literally see what happened. And the president made this comment that was something to the effect of, I gave the order and 30 minutes later he was gone. And that family, he remembers them well. And they came to the White House after that, and they were guests at a State of the Union, if I remember correctly, and things like that. And it's because of how deeply that impacted him. And I think there's this caricature that is false of Donald Trump as an unfeeling, unempathetic figure. I have seen him in those moments and seen how that impacts him in a human level that's tough to grasp, I think, without seeing it. So that was one thing that was really surprising. When I left the deputy DNI job, I thought to myself, I'll go back to the White House at some point. It's not that hard to say, it's not that hard to get in there, but like, you don't have to have a security clearance just to walk in the door at the White House, an appointment or whatever. A Republican president will be in there and again at some point, and I'll go or whatever. But when I walked out of CIA the last time, I couldn't help but wonder to myself, will I ever walk back through these gates again? Because you don't just get an appointment at CIA, you know what I mean? And so that job was extraordinary in that you realize the threats that this country faces every single day. You meet the people who are at the front lines of trying to stop that. And you realize the bad guys only have to get it right once. We've got to get it right every time. And that is a difficult thing. But you also get an appreciation of how good we are at that from a national security perspective, counterterrorism perspective. We've got some incredible capabilities that would boggle the mind, and some extraordinary people who put their lives on the line to keep all of us safe. And it was a pretty sobering and amazing experience.
Wow. Well, thank you for answering that question. And the first part of that answer is why I'm going to make sure my boys, who are young adults, listen to this interview, to hear you say that. I think young people need to hear that the movers and shakers on the planet, they're figuring it out, and you are clearly one of those people, and you're figuring it out. Now, here's the last thing I want to talk about. Usually I don't bring up a book until somebody's book is out, because you don't, the people can't get it. And so, but I've got to say, as many books as I have seen before they were published, while they were, still in, working form, yours that you are, and I don't know if you've finished it. I don't know what draft you're on. I don't know where it is in the publishing process, but the one that you have done that is coming out next, I've read much of it, and I think it's your life's work. I am blown away. I read a devotion book of one kind or another every day, sometimes two or three. And so I've read a lot of devotion books and small story, starting of day kind of books. But man, I haven't read anything like this from somebody like you that has been in the positions that you have been in and are using the setting. Like, I remember one of them, you're talking about standing on the seal at the CIA, watching something happening in national news, and it was your last day there, and you're taking that and putting that in a scriptural context. And I'd never seen anything like this. And so, do you mind just telling a little bit about this? And I promise I'm going to do everything I can to let everybody know when this book comes out. So I don't.
Thank you for that. Thank you. No, I'll tell you where the idea came from was similar to you. I have a handful of books that I read every single morning. One of them is the Maxwell Daily Reader. So John Maxwell leadership book, bite-sized stuff just to start the day off. New Morning Mercies. Trip is about as good as it gets from a devotional perspective. I love that. And I've got this book is one that is not even in print anymore. It's called 19 Stars. And what it is basically a study in military character and leadership. And the 19 Stars comes from, it's about four of our most famous generals. Or actually five, sorry, three. I think it's four stars and 1 3-star. I'm probably not doing the math right. Whatever it is, 19 stars. So I start my day with this reading material, and I realized that I felt like I had something to offer in that space. And what I wanted to do was take some of these scenes that you're talking about from inside the White House or inside the CIA or inside one of the stories is at a top secret underground bunker, where if there's some kind of nuclear something, this is where the senior government people would go, take you into these places that otherwise you would never have a chance to go, but use those illustrations as jumping off points for Bible teachings and how, putting all of these things in a biblical perspective from a biblical worldview. And so they're bite-sized stories, 500, 600 words. My goal is to do, 40 or 50 of them, something like that. And I'm still working on it a little bit. But, the thing that's been fascinating about it, Andy, and you and I have had many conversations about this offline, the publishing industry is so screwed up. And if I'm being completely honest, lacks imagination. And they have a cookie cutter formula that they love to bang out widgets every day. And this is what we've always done. And it's just plug and play. Nothing like this. I've never seen anything quite like it, even though it's a fairly familiar format, like a daily devotional type format. And it scared some people off because, the mainstream publishers ain't touching anything Christian like that.
Right.
And the Christian publishers are scared because, we've never done anything like this before. So I may sign a publishing deal and I may just release the thing myself and probably end up being happier doing it that way. So we'll see.
Well, the book is coming out if I have to publish it for you, because I'm telling you, and you and I have talked about this. You're right. They lack imagination. It's amazing to me because I know you've already been turned down and I look at, the Traveler's Gift turned down by 51 different publishers. And it's like if something is different, they don't want to deal with it. And yet it's something different that will hit, that will catch a nerve. And I agree. I agree with them that there has not been anything like this. But I absolutely disagree to my grave, and I will prove it with you that nobody wants this book. I mean, this is just so ridiculous to me because I'm telling you, this is a book. I'm just telling you, Cliff, this is a book. Now, you had a New York Times bestseller with Team of Vipers, and that was a book that people would buy one, and they would read it, and they would tell other people about it. But this is a book people are going to buy one, and then they're going to buy 10 and give them away. I'm telling you, this is a life-changing book, and it's stories told in a way that we haven't heard them before.
Well,
so I'm excited.
I appreciate you saying that. And as you know, your opinion on these matters is impeccable, and I place it above all others. And so I appreciate the encouragement. And so, yeah, one way or another, the world will read this book or have the opportunity to read this book at some point. So we'll keep working on it.
Buddy, how can people reach you? We want to put that on the show notes, and
so you
love
can,
for people
my
to be able to
website,
follow your story.
I'm easy to find. My website is cliffsims.com. You can get me on Instagram at Cliff Sims, on Twitter, Cliff_Sims. I'm easy to find online. I'd love to hear from folks, and I'm a big fan of you, as you know, all your books, the podcast, the daily show, like the whole deal. I can't get enough Andy Andrews content. So I just appreciate you trusting me with your audience here. So thank you for the opportunity.
Buddy, I can't tell you how grateful I am that you agreed to do this. And I will have you on everything when this next book comes out. I want to be involved in promoting that. And so thank you, buddy. Tell your wife and your son hello. Tell our mutual friend BJ I said hello, and thank you. You are truly just one of the most interesting people I've ever met, and one of the people I like the most too. So thank you, buddy.
The feeling's mutual. Thanks, Andy.
I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing what tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Smoke and Mirrors provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by the new book, Chicken Soup for the People Who Play Checkers Soul. As you're probably aware, Chicken Soup for the People Who Play Checkers Soul is the 1,000th title to come from this fabulous series of best-selling books. So another milestone has been reached in this string of literary miracles. With the 431st soup book, Chicken Soup for the Asparagus Eater's Soul, the series had reached 1 billion copies in sales. Then with the release of the 614th title, Chicken Soup for the Bonsai Tree Pruner's Soul, the mark of 2 billion was crossed. The 3 billion level happened with the release of number 789, Chicken Soup for the Vegetable Soup Lover's Soul. The 4 billion line was crossed with the audio worship version of Chicken Soup for the Pastors Who Save Souls Soul. And despite the series' stumble, with the attempted distribution of Chicken Soup for Those on Death Row's Soul, the wildly successful series now has its eye on the 5 billion mark with the newest title, Chicken Soup for the People Who Play Checkers Soul. Buy your copy today and help guarantee the authors will continue to irritate us with increasingly irrelevant titles for decades to come.